With the Austin Major just around the corner, stage one of the pick'ems has been released, and I'm going to do my best to navigate through my choices, both the elimination teams and the advancing teams. Do bear with me though, please, as I'm not feeling well at all. So I'll try my best to be as precise and explain myself as well as possible. But if there are some confusions and some derpy moments, then I'm sure you'll understand. Additionally, this stage, I've got to say, is really quite difficult to call. I think the teams are fairly evenly matched across most of them. There's a couple that stand out for good or bad reasons, but I'm going to try my best to explain it all. What we do know, though, right off the bat, which is always super helpful, of course, is our opening matchups. So we'll get through those. Complexity take on OG. Heroic against the Chinggis Warriors. Bait and Imperial. Betboom Namiga. Tyloo take on NRG. Linvision face Legacy, Wildcard, Metasport, and then FlyQuest will face off against Fluxo. So even as I'm reading those games out, a lot of them feel like coin flips. A lot of them feel incredibly close, especially considering that we're still in the same format, unfortunately, with the major, with best of ones into the best of threes being the elimination and advancing games. It's a shame, especially as PGL has shown us with their format, how good it can be when you have a ton of best of threes instead. But obviously that extends the amount of days, it extends the amount of streams, etc., etc. So it is what it is. At least best of ones does give us more twists, turns, shocks, and drama for the major, but in terms of predictions and pick'ems, not particularly great. However, I'm not going to try and overthink this too much in terms of my 3-0 and 0-3 picks. I'm just simply going to pick the teams I think are best and worst at this stage of the major. So, right off the bat, I'm going Heroic and Bait as my 3-0 picks, and then as my 0-3s, Chinggis Warriors and Metasport. So let's delve into the Heroic and Chinggis Warriors first off, because they actually play each other in the first game of the tournament for both those teams respectively. And I'll explain this from a point of view that I know some of you haven't been following this level of Counter-Strike as much, but if you've been following Top Flight CS, you'll be aware of who Heroic are, because they've been really paving their way through in the Tier 1 tournaments, really going back since the beginning of this year. Most notably, as I'm recording this right now, Dallas is about to start its playoff section in just a few hours' time, and Heroic did work in the playoffs. Sorry, not in the playoffs, in the group stage, I should say, where they got a win against Aurora in their first game. Aurora, a legit top 10 contender team. They lost to Falcons, but they took a map off them, and that's Falcons with m0NESY, the team that many people think could even beat Vitality at the major and could still beat Vitality at Dallas. We'll have to wait and see what happens on that one. They beat FaZe, sure it was with Skulls and Simple, but they still beat them. And then Aurora did get their revenge and beat them 2-1, but they took a map off of Aurora as well. So they're consistently playing some of the top teams on the planet, and they're either winning or they're holding their own and taking maps off them. Before Dallas, they got a notable finals win against Big at a 3-1. They beat Bait, Betboom, Wildcard, Namiga. Now, that's only a small sample size of the wins they've been getting, but those names have been read off intentionally because those teams, apart from Big, are at this stage of the major. They're all here, they're all present, and they've got wins against them. In some cases, quick fire 2-0s. But one team that I haven't mentioned them beating is the Chinggis Warriors. They have 2 best-of-3 victories over the Chinggis Warriors, the team they're facing first here at stage 1, and they played them earlier this month at the Nomadic Masters, where they beat them twice 2-0 on 4 different maps. So they got a 13-3 win on Mirage, 13-5 Dust 2, 13-8 Nuke, 13-10 on Ancient. 4 different maps and smashed them. And I watched those games as well, by the way, and that's flattering to the Chinggis Warriors. It could have been way more one-sided, especially on Ancient. So not only do I see Heroic beating Chinggis Warriors convincingly in their opening game, and they know a lot about this team now, they've played them twice, they have a much better map pool than them and most other teams, to be honest, at this stage of the major. They're playing against opposition of the tier 1 caliber and getting wins against them and grinding out. Even when they lose, they're grinding out maps. It's never an easy, straightforward, flatline demolition of Heroic. They're always standing their ground. they are just for me the best team at this stage of the major in multiple caveats. Tania, one of the best players at this stage of the major. Incredible performances recently for him. Sun Pius, veteran, solid AWP who's getting some of that next level kind of performances that we were expecting to see from him way back in his Ents days. Now we're starting to see him shine a little bit in Heroic. But for me, it's LNZ. I think his leadership is so interesting in terms of the protocols. The mid-round calls are really on point as well, and they have a rock solid map pool. Like, realistically, the only map they don't play is Inferno, which is one of Chingus Warriors' best maps, and they play every other map. They adopted Train pretty early on. They play Anubis. They play everything. So it allows Heroic to have versatility throughout the entirety of this stage of the major, and I really just don't see any team beating them. It is possible they will lose a map, though. It is possible that they will lose a game because they're not vitality levels. They're not an ironclad top 10, top 5 team in the world right now, but I think in time they very well could be. So that's the reason for Heroic at 3-0. Chingus Warriors, simply put, I've been very underwhelmed. I've watched quite a few of their games in the lead up to this major. Obviously, I watched them get beat by Heroic. They're typically like, in these stages of the major, you'll find teams that are smurfing and demolishing their domestic matchups. I think Fluxo actually falls into this category as a fairly good example of this. They're smashing, like in Fluxo's case, Brazilian teams, South American teams, pretty easily, pretty convincingly, but they've not really been tested against international squads, against tier 1 opposition, against teams that you would expect them to maybe struggle against. We're not seeing them really utilize that and show what they can do on a grand stage. But in Chingus Warriors' case, they're not even smashing their domestic matchups. They're losing against Mongolian teams. They lost against the Huns 3 weeks ago. They lost against Nomads. And when they venture further out into the Asian region, they're losing to Tai Lu. They also lost to them recently. So Chingus Warriors, like, individually, I'm not that keen on them. I don't really think they have the depth of map pool as a lot of the other teams. Like, they play a lot of Anubis, but they lose Anubis a lot. They played it 10 times. They've got 50% or less win rate. They got a 17% win rate on Mirage, and Mirage is going to see quite a lot of play, I'd imagine, in this stage of the major. I just don't see them doing anything. I think they're going to be 0-3 fodder for sure. And then we go into the other side, which is going to be Bait and Metisport in the respective 3-0 and 0-3s. I rate Bait actually pretty highly, and Bait, interestingly, is the only team that recently has a victory against Heroic. So it's also the fact if they play each other, then there's a chance that Bait may actually get the W against Heroic as well. So I kind of wanted to hedge my bets in that regard in terms of recent results. They're on a 5-match win streak coming into this event, including a win against the Chingus Warriors. And so I just think the Baits have enough ability level, firepower. The one thing you could maybe hold against them is a lack of like top level experience. They sometimes choke in these games, but I'm very impressed with NPL in particular, and I think the fact that they will be starting off against Imperial is a game that they can win, and I wouldn't be surprised if they really accelerate and make something out of it. But on the other side of the coin, I think that they have the capabilities of being one of the best teams here, for sure. There is also a chance they don't make it to the next stage, and there's a lot of teams here that I think could be potential 3-0 picks, but for one reason or another, I just don't have the faith. One of those teams that people will be looking at, I'm sure, is Complexity, and so let's discuss Complexity a little bit. At the time of recording this video, Halzerk looks like he won't be making the major. It looks like he has visa issues, and he will be unable to attend the major. That is a massive body blow, a massive gut punch to Complexity, and Halzerk as well, of course, who I'm sure is devastated. Now, there is another 10 days-ish, if not a bit more, until the major starts. Maybe that gets resolved. Maybe he is able to attend. And if he is, then I might put an update video out here and get Complexity involved in like the 3-0 side of things. But as it stands, we don't know if he's going to make it. Looks unlikely. And we don't know who's going to be stepping in for him if he doesn't make it. That's a real problem for Complexity, because after Elige went off to, well, greener pastures, which hasn't really worked out for him just yet, Complexity were wrecked. Like they had 6 or 7 best of 3s in a row where they didn't win a single map. Don't even talk about a match, like not even a map. they look dead and buried. Then they get 6E, they get Nyx to start to feel their way into the team. Things start to turn around, and Holzuk was a big part of that. Holzuk and Grim were two massive components of this comeback, and them starting to make a real case for themselves again as a team that you have to look out for. So Holzuk not being there is horrendous for Complexity. So I'm not going to put Complexity as a 3-0 contender. I'm going to put them through as a very speculative, risky pick as a 3-2 contender. And this is with question. You can put like 5 question marks over the top of this, asterisks, all kinds of caveats, like over this Complexity team, because it depends very much on if Halzuk can't make it, who's going to be stepping in. Is it their coach? Do they get some like mercenary player in? Maybe someone like a Skulls. Who do they get in for Complexity here at this point? That for me is going to determine whether they make it or not. But I still think if they get a decent replacement, they can still make it to the next stage of the major. That's how solid the rest of the core of this lineup is at this stage for me. And so I'm going to have faith in them, albeit there's a lot of doubt, scrutiny, and confusion about what's going on with this team. To advance, I'm going to have Bet Boom. Now, I don't even want to think about Bet Boom in the 3-0 category because of their insane inconsistency. But I think when you look at this team and you look at the ability levels that the roster has throughout, it is star-studded, Magnajez, Exile. I mean, Exile's been up and down like a roller coaster. It's hard to know what kind of Exile's going to show up, what form he's going to be in. Is it going to be Dr. Jekyll? Is it going to be Mr. Hyde? No one knows. Zorti is an AWPer, solid, but Boomich's IGLing is really what sells me on this Bet Boom team. I have a lot of faith in him. I think he's a very good IGL. I think he's going to get the best out of them. And it does seem to me that they raise their level, I should say, to the occasion. And so I think at the major, like realistically, this is where Bet Boom should start to look pretty good and dialed in. Could be a 3-2 job, could be super close and scrappy and scary for them. Another thing that kind of puts me off a little bit about Bet Boom, especially even thinking about a 3-0, is the fact that going in their last 3 months, they have lost 5 out of 6 of their last games. Really poor performances, losing to Ecstatic twice, losing to Ruby, and they lost to Heroic and Bait, which is a lot more understandable. Their only win was against Gun 5. Now, they did pick up maps in each of their losses, so they don't go down without a fight. I don't want to look too much into that, though. I think they've been boot camping really hard, and I still have a lot of faith in this team. Maybe it will be misplaced faith. Maybe this is going to be a garbage call, and I'll live to rue and regret that decision. Next up is Wildcard, and like, in all honesty, you could probably make a case very similar to what I just said before. Now, I'll also discuss Metasport a little bit here as well, which is kind of intentional. I didn't talk about them much afterwards. But I think Wildcard starting against Metasport is a pretty straightforward win for Wildcard, I would assume. Metasport, I have not been particularly impressed with them. I mean, I think you'd have to go back to when they had Jaquinho to when I last really believed in this team. They additionally have been playing quite a bit online and like in smaller tournaments, and they've been having a lot of losses. Like their last 3 games, they lost to Alliance, Astrum, and TNL. Like, just teams that probably don't roll off the tongue for anybody in CS. Additionally, when I've been watching some of their games, I've not been blown away by their protocols. Their map pool seems kind of weak. Like they don't play Train, but they also have very poor kind of win percentages on maps like Dust 2 that are probably going to get played quite a bit. Ancient's another map they do play quite a bit, but they've had a lot of losses. I just don't have much faith in this Metasport team, and I just don't see them doing really anything at this stage of the major. But additionally, I think Wildcard will come in, get a pretty straightforward win over Metasport, and maybe they'll slip and slide, right? Like, they have a really impressive team to me. Fuzi in particular, statistically, is a monster. He's been really lighting it up this last 3 or so months. Stanislaw's IGLing, I think, is really solid. Across the board, this team is actually like got quite a few fraggers within it. But it's the tenacity and it's the grit of this team. It's their refusal to go down without a fight. We've seen them multiple times since they erupted into the scene, beat teams and take teams that they had no right to be on the server with, to their absolute limits. And so I think we've reached a point now with Wildcard where we have to say, yeah, I think they are going to make it through to the next stage of the major, and they probably will do so fairly convincingly. So I'm going to have them to make it through. Next up is Tyloo. Tai Lu have been incredibly impressive lately. They're on an 8-match win streak, mainly domestic matches, to be fair, but 8 matches, and the last 5 they've won have been without losing a map. 5 2-0s in a row, and that includes wins against Lin Vision, who are obviously here, and FlyQuest, who are also here. If you extend to losing a map, they also beat FlyQuest 2-1. So they've got 3 results against teams at this very tournament. They're on a heater right now. And this is a young team full of crazy talent. Like G joining, Messiah as well. Very good. Then you've obviously got Jam Young, who is one of the star players, one of the main players to watch out for on this squad. Tai Lu is looking good. They're looking sharp. A lot of success recently, kind of finding that good form just before the major makes them a very exciting prospect. They're against NRG in their first game, and I don't have too much faith in NRG. Like, it seems to me like they're NA merchants. Like, they beat the NA teams and they go to international events and they get slaughtered. Like, they have a loss against Legacy, who I think are actually an underrated team. Obviously stepping in for Bestia here, but they also lost to Falcons, fair enough. They lost to Aurora, fair enough, at Dallas. Before that, a lot of wins against NA teams, but they also lost to NIP a month ago. So there's nothing really for me to believe in this NRG squad to come to an international tournament here, albeit on home soil, but to come to an international tournament against teams that are a caliber up from the NA opposition they're typically playing and have really any success. So I think Tai Lu beat NRG, and then they have a good shot at making the next stage of the major. This is where things get quite a lot more difficult, and I'm gonna throw a curveball in here, and it's gonna surprise some people. I'm gonna have Legacy. I think this Legacy team is genuinely pretty damn good. As I mentioned just before, they've had wins against teams at this very tournament that you wouldn't expect them to beat. So they beat NRG, for example. They've also beat Wildcard in this last week or so. They've had multiple games against like Fluxo and some of these other teams here as well. I was very impressed with Sadzin, especially against Vitality. They played against Vitality on Dust 2 at Dallas, and they made Vitality sweat hard. It was a 13-11 game. Sadzin was popping off. A really solid team across the board with a pretty good map pool as well. And I think that they can squeak by every single major we come into, and there is a litany. There's multiple Brazilian squads that people write off, maybe even have in the 0-3 bracket, right? It's like, I know a lot of people will be looking at Fluxo here to go 0-3, and some other teams in previous majors. Imperial is actually a good example because they've been in this position themselves multiple times. And they just managed to make it through. They managed to just turn it on. Like, there's something about that Brazilian flair when it comes to majors, man. Like, they really do step up. Now, I was picking between either Legacy or Imperial. Do I want to go for both? Do I think both Brazilian teams could make it through here between those two? I'm also looking at FlyQuest. I think FlyQuest also have like a real legit chance here. They're up against Fluxo in their first game, which I think they can certainly win. Regali, I'm very impressed with Regali's AWPing for FlyQuest, and they have this core in, you know, Inns and Vexite, etc., that have been in multiple majors in the past, have constantly been written off, and then just perform to a higher level. It seems like, again, they step their level up at majors. This is a tough one between the two of these, I've got to be honest. But do you know what? I'm going to go with FlyQuest. I'm going to go with FlyQuest over Imperial because I do just have this feeling that Regali is going to go nuclear in this event. Excuse me. I also think Netic is a very good player as well. Statistically speaking, he's up towards the top level. They're playing against Fluxo in their first game, and I think it's not going to be an easy one. Like, they could lose, but I do have faith in this FlyQuest team to get it done, and so I'm going to stick with them. It's a gamble for sure. Leaving out Imperial feels bad. Namiga is another team that I think some people have making it through. I'm not too sold on them. OG is another periphery pick. But overall, do you know what? I'm going to lock those in. I feel relatively good about most of these picks. There's always an element of who knows what the hell is going to happen at these majors. But thank you for persevering with my sick ass, like just going all over the place and pausing and coughing and all that good stuff. So either way, fingers crossed that this is correct. If you agree or disagree with me, comment below and let me know your thoughts. Which teams do you think I've got completely wrong? Whether it be I've overestimated them or underestimated them, do have your say in the comment section. I'm always really interested to know what you guys have to say. So let's have a look, and best of luck to you on that diamond dream. Hopefully we can hit it, but it's going to be tough. See you in the next video. Peace.